In October 2022, SCB, Saigon Commercial Joint Stock Bank, experienced a mass withdrawal by customers, shaking the entire financial system. This phenomenon prompted the State Bank of Vietnam and the Ministry of Public Security to launch an investigation. Upon inspection, authorities discovered multiple suspicious loans and large sums of money transferred abroad. Alarming figures were uncovered. Over VND 304 trillion, equivalent to more than USD 12 billion, had vanished through 916 fake loan applications under non-existent companies. A nationwide investigation was launched and later expanded globally. A long list of frozen assets emerged, including hundreds of apartments, villas, and bank accounts in Switzerland, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. All were linked by an unprecedented underground financial network. In less than 4 years, more than USD 12 billion was quietly siphoned from Vietnam's banking system. And all traces led to one woman. How could someone embezzle such an enormous sum? Who was this powerful woman? And how did she pull it off? You are watching a special investigative series, From Tycoon to Death Row. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the most sophisticated banking drain system ever uncovered in Vietnam's financial history. Flashback to October 2022, SCB customers rushed to withdraw savings from their personal accounts. The situation spread nationwide. Online transactions were frozen, and branches struggled with crowds lining up past the sidewalks. Many ATMs ran out of cash within hours. Rumors of the bank losing liquidity began surfacing on social media. This forced the State Bank of Vietnam to intervene. Internal reports showed that over VND 18 trillion had been withdrawn from SCB in just 3 days. Unlike ordinary confidence crises, this report was accompanied by a series of suspicious international fund transfers through shell companies with no registered domestic tax codes. The Ministry of Public Security also launched an urgent inspection. A review of the loan files revealed abnormal structures. Numerous businesses received loans from SCB without legitimate collateral. Many loan documents shared the same business addresses or had identical identification numbers for representatives. Some signatures appeared to be repeatedly photocopied. Moreover, some companies were established and dissolved within just 3 months. Funds dispersed by SCB circulated among these shell entities before being transferred to corporate accounts in Singapore and Switzerland. Transaction analysis revealed that over USD 12 billion had exited the banking system within 4 years through complex circular movements, laundered via internal corporate bonds. Thousands of loan contracts were signed automatically under an internalization process, eliminating the role of credit assessment and forming a fully legalized embezzlement system. After tracing the cash flow, investigators identified SCB as the direct victim of the scheme, transformed into an unlimited lending tool operated by a system of fake businesses controlled from within. SCB did not collapse but was effectively hollowed out. Loans totaling VND 304 trillion were mostly unrecoverable. No real collateral existed. Asset valuation reports were forged. SCB's internal control system was disabled by placing associates of a powerful woman in key positions: credit, legal, accounting, and even the risk approval board. That woman was none other than Truong My Lan. As chairwoman of Vạn Thịnh Phát Group, she controlled SCB through majority shareholding, despite not holding any formal executive role. SCB became her private ATM for nearly 5 years. Loans were approved even before applications arrived. Some documents listed disbursement dates earlier than the contract signing. Several internal customer codes repeated up to 126 times, without system alerts due to source code tampering. When depositors' data was reviewed, the extent of the damage became clear. Nearly 1.6 million individuals and organizations held savings accounts at SCB at the time. Among them were over 140,000 senior citizens, 36,000 students saving for tuition, and tens of thousands of small businesses maintaining payment accounts. All were indirect victims, not because of their mistakes, but because their trust had been exploited. On October 12, 2022, a special investigative task force was formed. Its top priority: trace every loan issued by SCB from 2018 to 2022. In SCB's internal data center, technical teams discovered a coded blacklist of 916 loan records, invisible in the main accounting system, but complete with disbursement instructions. These files were processed through a separate internal channel, requiring no executive-level approval. Each file contained loan requests, financial statements, and fund usage plans, all formally valid. But in reality, hundreds of borrowing companies showed no signs of actual operation. Some offices were vacant, others were photocopy shops or single-story homes. In the cloud storage system, investigators traced login logs. All loan records were created from a fixed set of IP addresses located on the 10th floor of SCB's headquarters, administrative department. Logins occurred precisely every 72 hours. All documents were uploaded from an internal server with the highest access level. The person managing the IP group, Truong My Lan's personal assistant. The companies listed in the 916 loan records shared common traits. Established after 2016, no tax filings, zero revenue, and frequent changes in legal representatives, every 6 to 8 months. Over 300 companies shared the same phone number. Nearly 200 of them used the same email domain, registered via a hosting service provider based in Hong Kong. Once dispersed by SCB, the funds did not stay idle. They flowed in tight loops. Company A transferred to Company B, then Company B to Company C, all entities within the same corporate cluster. The final destination, overseas corporate accounts. Eventually, the money ended up in a cluster of bank accounts in Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. Many transactions used fake identification codes and incorrect transfer purposes, such as royalty payments, promotion services, and digital content investment. Tracing the cash flow was just the beginning. Once the task force began freezing assets, they discovered that most of them were registered under other people's names. Over 200 luxury apartments in Ho Chi Minh City were purchased with funds from SCB loans. Yet the legal owners were drivers, secretaries, chefs, and even security guards of shell companies. Some of these individuals had already left Vietnam. It didn't stop there. A long list of 42 legal entities registered in the British Virgin Islands, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands came to light. From these entities, the money flowed through fake investment funds and returned to Vietnam via capital contribution contracts or real estate project investments, all legitimized with advisory documents from international law firms. When authorities raided SCB's and affiliated companies' archives, numerous original files had already been destroyed. A few surviving files were found in torn, scorched condition, or as invalid scans. Some showed signs of metadata tampering and backdated creation. Internal logs had been manually deleted using specialized software. These shell companies were not isolated. They were cross-linked in tangled ownership chains. Company A held 49% of Company B invested 60% into Company C, and Company C was the majority shareholder of Company A. The ownership structure formed a closed loop, rendering tracking efforts useless unless the exact weak point was broken. As a result, the investigation had to shift to a multidisciplinary model. Economic police were just the surface. Underneath was an interagency coalition. Bank inspectors, tax authorities, customs, cybersecurity, financial intelligence units, and international partners. Bilateral cooperation documents were activated. A red notice was silently issued through Interpol, with no public target name, but everyone knew. The hunt was for offshore shadow accounts. Among the 916 suspicious loan files, 82% were approved by a group of mid-level SCB employees. When tracing the approval flow, investigators found they all originated from a special processing unit, not listed in the bank's official structure. Some of the approvers had been appointed only months earlier, with minimal backgrounds and incomplete personnel records. Others had previously worked for Vạn Thịnh Phát Group and were transferred into SCB without going through any official recruitment. Their HR profiles appeared to have been backfilled, created after the appointment. The 42 companies receiving capital all shared direct or indirect ownership ties to 3 key legal entities: Windsor Investment Corporation, Majestic Real Estate Development LLC, and Green Plus Real Estate Group JSC. All 3 had legal or transactional links to one name, Truong My Lan. Tracing the shareholder path backward, the entire ownership model resembled a star configuration, with Truong My Lan at its core. At one point, she held direct and indirect control of up to 91% of SCB shares, through a complex web of intermediary entities. Though she had no formal executive role, her power surpassed even the CEOs. All internal SCB meetings from 2019 to 2021 had recorded audio logs. Upon decrypting the files, investigators discovered directives from an off-system office using codenames and encrypted instructions. The person issuing orders was always referred to as the boss lady. No full name mentioned. Cross-checking schedules, phone signals, and location data pointed to one person, Truong My Lan, the only woman who moved freely between SCB and Vạn Thịnh Phát. She didn't sign contracts or leave fingerprints. Every command was passed verbally through intermediaries, secretaries, financial advisors, and legal aides. But digital traces couldn't be erased. A computer once connected via internal VPN stored the full capital flow chart. The original file was titled system.mtlmasterflow.vsdx. Within this system, the 916 fake loan records were only the surface. Beneath it was a network of over 1,000 shell companies operated from a special finance unit on the 8th floor of a Vạn Thịnh Phát building. Each company had its own accountant, seal, and bank account, but every disbursement decision was faxed to one place. Office 8B, locked room. From 2018 to 2022, all the money withdrawn from SCB was funneled into two channels: luxury real estate within Vietnam and underground investments abroad. Dubious M&A deals, stalled real estate projects, and asset transfers with anonymous buyers all served as smokescreens to legalize the flow of stolen funds. The legal structure was so refined it passed international audits. Investigators concluded the crimes were systematic, premeditated, and orchestrated with exceptional sophistication. Truong My Lan wasn't swept up by the current. She was the architect of the current, designing the internal loan structure, the phantom legal entities, and the cross-border laundering mechanisms. A special task force report on motive revealed that the crime wasn't spontaneous or accidental. It was born from ambition, an ambition to expand a real estate empire without boundaries in scale, geography, or financial control. Between 2015 and 2019, Vạn Thịnh Phát aggressively acquired prime land from downtown Ho Chi Minh City to outlying economic zones. Behind these multi-trillion VND deals was a painful truth. Real capital was insufficient. Investor funding channels were frozen due to lack of transparency. No IPO. No independent audit disclosures. As credit markets tightened, Truong My Lan chose the only path she could fully control: hijacking SCB to fund herself. Loans were circulated internally and hidden from banking oversight, since every monitoring department had already been infiltrated by her allies. Truong My Lan believed that financial, banking, and legal systems could be deceived with enough paperwork. Subsidiaries, technical memos, fake valuations, private bond issuances, triangular contracts, and intermediaries. That belief didn't stem from recklessness. It came from surviving 20 years at the top of Vietnam's elite financial circle. And that belief turned her into a criminal. On October 8, 2022 at 6:35 a.m., a special task force departed from the southern office of the Ministry of Public Security. Target: a penthouse in a luxury complex in District 1, Ho Chi Minh City. All security cameras around the building were disabled 15 minutes prior. Truong My Lan was apprehended before she could flee the country. Simultaneously, fleeing other teams raided and arrested key personnel at SCB and Vạn Thịnh Phát Group. Credit heads, legal advisors, shell company representatives, and personal assistants. Every one of them on the arrest list. Personal data, phones, and hard drives were seized and encrypted on site. The news was not released immediately. The ministry imposed a strict 48-hour information blackout. Every move in the media was tightly controlled. This was no longer just an economic crime. It had become a national-scale investigation, where a single slip could cause trillions of dong to vanish beyond the country's borders within hours. 4 days later, the first official press release was issued. Truong My Lan was formally charged with fraud and asset misappropriation and violating banking regulations. Investigators confirmed she was the ringleader behind SCB's manipulation, operating a network of over 1,000 shell companies and embezzling over VND 304 trillion. The case expanded at an unprecedented pace. Within just 2 months, 86 individuals were prosecuted. On March 28th, courtroom number 5 at the Ho Chi Minh City People's Court was placed under special security measures. Media cameras were barred from filming, yet the room was packed with eyes, public observers and financial analysts alike. Truong My Lan sat in the front row, exhausted but cold-eyed. No longer a billionaire executive, she was now defendant number 110/2023, appealing a death sentence. Behind her sat former deputy general directors, SCB department heads, and senior figures who had operated the underground financial empire for nearly a decade. The case file spanned over 104,000 pages, sealed in 87 boxes. A crime too large to be hidden behind closed doors or business titles. On April 11, 2024, the verdict was delivered. Truong My Lan, the woman who once moved billions with a nod, was sentenced to death for embezzlement. The amount stolen, over USD 12.5 billion. The courtroom fell silent. No shouting, only the sound of the judge's gavel, marking the end of a dark chapter in the nation's financial history. In September 2024, the appeal resumed. By now, the case had gone beyond Vietnam's borders. Prosecutors added charges of fraud, money laundering, and illegal cross-border transfers. Prime real estate assets were frozen, and international accounts in Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands were flagged for investigation through global cooperation. In December 2024, the High People's Court in Ho Chi Minh City upheld the death sentence. However, for the first time, it introduced a condition. If she returned at least USD 11 billion, the sentence could be reduced to life imprisonment. The message was clear. What was lost couldn't fully be recovered, but justice could be measured through national. By March 2025, after several recovery rounds, over VND 24 trillion had been returned to the state treasury, along with dozens of seized assets. Skyscrapers, urban areas, luxury cars, and more than 110 land lots. The case entered its final stage, but Vietnam's legal, banking, and public systems continued to analyze, reflect, and remain on alert. This was more than a case. It was the reckoning of a system that thought it could outsmart the truth. Banking experts dubbed it a soft systemic collapse, where internal controls failed against an external force embedded deeply within. Loopholes in corporate bond issuance, the nullification of internal audits, and the absence of independent checks allowed the crime to spiral uncontrollably. As a result, a series of regulatory reforms were proposed. The Ministry of Finance tightened corporate bond rules. The State Bank reviewed all internal credit protocols at commercial banks. The risk warning system was upgraded, from reactive assessments to proactive interventions. For the justice system, the case marked a turning point in handling large-scale financial crimes in the digital era. For the first time, hundreds of terabytes of electronic data were collected, decrypted, and used to reconstruct criminal acts through flowchart algorithms, IP tracking, and cross-border server log analysis. Justice no longer lived on paper. It resided in data. What do you think about this shocking embezzlement case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.